All right, hello there, thrill seekers. I am in lovely Hebden Bridge, England today. So this is not my bookshelf. This is the bookshelf at the Airbnb that I'm staying at, courtesy of my friend Rob, who was kind enough to rent this place for me to stay in while I'm here in Hebden Bridge. Otherwise, I'd be sleeping on somebody's floor or couch or something. So thank you, Rob. And thank any of you who want to send me donations, which I'll talk about at the end of this video, because that helps out a lot with things like this. So, tonight I am beginning the Hebden Bridge retreat, which I'll put the retreat, well, now let's put it up now. Here are the places that I'm going to be in Europe this time, starting tonight with the retreat at Hebden Bridge, and continuing on to Manchester on Saturday, then Finland, and then Germany. So all of these events, as far as I know, are still accepting applicants. As I keep saying, Benedictus Hauf might give you a little like, oh, we're not accepting applicants anymore, but if you bug them enough, they might accept you. So please, even this retreat that starts tonight, it continues on for 3 more days, so you can maybe squeeze your way in there if you contact the people who are organizing it, which you can do at the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/events. Okay, that's out of the way. That's logistical stuff. So, tonight I have been asked to talk about impermanence. So I wanted to see what I could say about impermanence on a video first, as sort of a warm-up to what I'll say tonight at my lecture. And I found a nice article about the subject from Shohaku Okumura, which I'm going to use as kind of launching off point for my own talk. I often do this. I often use somebody else's work as a launching off point, and then I improvise. So it won't be, I don't just quote other people. But so I'd like to talk to you about that. It begins with a poem by Kodo Sawaki, and I guess I kind of knew in the back of my mind that Kodo Sawaki wrote poetry, but I'd forgotten about it. Kodo Sawaki, in case you don't know, was Gudo Nishijima's first teacher. That's my teacher. Gudo Nishijima Roshi was my ordaining teacher, and his first teacher, the teacher he quoted the most, was this guy named Kodo Sawaki, who was a kind of a well-known Zen master in Japan in the 20th century. So here's Kodo Sawaki's poem. Even insentient beings, such as grasses and trees, wither today. Seeing them in front of their eyes, how can people be without grieving? So that's the poem, and it doesn't rhyme, but we'll give him a pass for that. This is a poem about impermanence, and I'll just tell you a couple of things that. Actually, this poem isn't by Kodo Sawaki. So he's quoting somebody else, but Okumura Roshi doesn't say who. He says, in his teisho on this waka, waka being a poem, waka waka, Kodo Sawaki Roshi emphasized the quality of our eyes, whether they are open to see impermanence and whether we can feel grief about the plants and our own lives. He compared himself with Dogen Zenji, who deeply realized impermanence by experiencing his mother's death when he was 7 years old. Seeing the incense smoke at his mother's funeral, Dogen aspired to become a Buddhist monk. Sawaki Roshi's mother died when he was 5 years old, and his father died when he was 7. He was adopted by his aunt, but soon her husband died from a stroke in front of Sawaki Roshi's eyes in the same year, and then he was adopted by Bunkichi Sawaki. And there's some more about Sawaki Roshi's life there. But impermanence is often the thing that gets us to practice, the recognition of impermanence, the recognition of the impermanence of life, for example. I think in my own case, this is definitely true. My mother died when I was somewhere in my 40s when my mother died, but she began to become ill with the sickness that would eventually kill her when I was a teenager. So I was aware of life's impermanence at that moment in a very concrete way, in a very undeniable, in-your-face sort of way, seeing my mother's deterioration of her health, which continued very slowly for decades. And being given the knowledge, being given the information that, yes, this is a hereditary thing. And Brad, you could get it too. Isn't that nice to hear when you're 15 or 14 years old, or however old I was when I heard that? So that really spurred me on to practicing Zen. A lot of people in Japan get into Zen when they're in their 50s or 60s because they suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I'm getting old now and I'm going to die someday. So a lot of people get into it later in life for those reasons. I got into it early in life for those reasons. And as some of you who've watched this channel know, my father passed away last year in November of 2022. And I just got word that a guy I know who was a monk at San Francisco Zen Center, he just passed away rather suddenly. I don't know how much the family wants to make this public, so I'm not going to say his name, but that's not out of trying to diss him or anything. I just don't know if they wanted the news spread around. So, but he was a guy I ordained his wife, so I knew his wife better than I knew him. But he was a very interesting fellow, and I liked him a lot. Very odd sort of duck. I don't think he would mind me saying that, because I think he knew that he was a rather strange person, but strange in a good way. And him passing away, brought the reality of impermanence to me even more greatly. But here's an interesting thing. I would like to give you two quotes from Dogen Zenji, Master Dogen, who talks about impermanence. Well, let's give you this one first, and then I'll go on to the second one, because that'll make a little bit more sense. This is the one that Okumura Roshi uses in his essay, and it is from Shobogenzo Hotsu Bodaishin, which is arousing bodhichitta. I'm not sure what Nishijima Roshi calls this essay, but it's arousing the mind of the way, or arousing the bodhi mind. Arousing the mind of the way, arousing bodhichitta might sound very fancy and, oh, arousing bodhichitta, wow, what is that? But it kind of means making your mind up to do a practice and try to figure out what the hell is life, which is, what I did when I was 14 or 15 years old, that eventually led me to doing Zen Buddhism and doing this whole thing that I've done with my life today. That's arousing Bodhi mind. But arousing Bodhi mind can be as simple as, if you're watching this video, you have probably, well, I would say definitely aroused Bodhi mind. There's no reason to watch a boring video by a guy sitting in front of a bookshelf talking about Zen unless you are keenly interested in this subject. And I include even you trolls I got another troll comment the other day, or that I just saw this morning, but it came like a week ago, I guess, and I was reminded that there's a lot of sort of people hate watching my videos, and I would include even you people who hate watch my videos as people who've aroused the Bodhi mind, because you wouldn't even hate watch a video like this unless you had some kind of desire to understand and figure out life. And just to kind of circumvent what this particular hate watcher was commenting about, I'm not here to try to teach you what it is. I consider you and I to be kind of walking this path together. We may be on different segments of the path, and it's always good to listen to people who are on different segments of the path. I do that all the time. This is why I keep reading Dogen and Nisargadatta Maharaj and people like that. So we're walking this path together. I'm not giving you the information from on high and trying to tell you how it is. But anyway, let's leave that and see what Dogen says about arousing the Bodhi mind and how it relates to impermanence. Here we go. In general, arousing bodhi mind and attaining the way both depend on the instantaneous arising and perishing of all things. In this way, whether we wish in our minds or not, being pulled by our past karma, the transmigration within the cycle of life and death continues without stopping for a single kshana. And a kshana is a period of time so small that it can't possibly be measured. That was the idea within Buddhism. I guess there's in modern physics, there is a concept called Planck time, which is kind of the same, a much more refined idea, but it's basically the same idea as the kshana, a time so short you can't even measure it because it's too fast to measure. With the body-mind that is transmigrating in this manner through the cycle of life and death, that's this body and mind that we have right now, we should without fail arouse the bodhi mind being the mind of enlightenment, of ferrying others before ourselves. So trying to lead others to the truth before we cross over ourselves is the bodhisattva ideal. And we could talk about that some other day. Let's just continue. Even if, on the way of arousing the bodhi mind, we hold our body mind dear, so bodhi mind and body mind are two different things, it is born, this is the body and mind we have now, body and mind we have now, it is born, grows old, becomes sick, and dies. After all, it cannot be our own personal possession. Now, this is something I've talked about on this channel in separate videos. We think that our body and mind is our own possession, that it's my body, my mind. And I do agree in the political sense that sort of idea of what is it? God, what is the slogan? Now I can't remember it, but the idea, my body, my choice, that's right. So whether it's what you do with your unborn child or something, or whether it's what you do with receiving experimental medical treatments that the government recommends, I think it has to be my body, my choice. So I agree with that on that kind of scale, on that kind of political level. But on the other level, the more philosophical level, it's not my body. It's not my mind. The mind and body, I have this sense of me, of being a personal individual self, but that sense of self is ultimately false and mistaken. And if you practice enough, I promise you, you get to the point, everybody gets to the point where you start to go, oh, that's true. And for me, that was sort of the reaction I had, because I thought, oh, this is just a philosophical thing that they say, and I've heard it 100,000 times. And then at one moment I was going, oh my God, that's actually true. It is not my body. It is not my mind. It is the possession of the universe. This body and this mind has nothing to do with this sense of personal individuality. The sense of personal individuality is just something that kind of arises and is ultimately false. Here, let's keep going with Dogen. Our lives arise and perish within each kshana. That's that moment that's too short to be measured. Their swiftness is like this. Moment after moment, practitioners should not forget this principle. While being within this swiftness of arising and perishing of transmigration in each kshana, if we arouse one single thought of ferrying others before ourselves, of helping others before we help ourselves, the eternal longevity of the Tathagata, the Buddha in the cosmic sense, immediately manifests itself. And that's one of the things about impermanence that we forget. So people are... when they hear the word impermanence, they kind of think, oh, one of these days I'll grow old and die. Or in my case, when I was 14 or 15, one of these days I might get sick like my mom is getting sick, and then die not just die, but die in this really horrible way, like my mother did. And that's impermanence. That's what people think of as impermanence. Sometimes they think of it when they're getting old, when they're as old as me. Because I'm an old codger. I know I don't look as old as I am, but I'm really effing old. So you get this sense of impermanence then. But what Dogen is saying is that impermanence also is not just that. It is that this moment is impermanence. This moment arises and passes quickly. And I think during the retreat, I might try to go deeper into this and talk about Dogen's Uji, being time, in which he gets really deeply into this idea. And maybe if I do it right, and remember to do it right, I'll videotape some of these talks and put them up here on the YouTube channel later. But he talks very deeply about that idea of the swiftness of arising and passing of the moment. But this is the Buddhist idea, that this moment that you have right now is your life. This kshana is your life. Your life is over and done with in each kshana. So each kshana is a new life, is a new transmigration. So transmigration or reincarnation or rebirth or whatever you want to call it isn't just something that occurs once in your life. You die and then you get reincarnated. It is something that is going. And this is why we know that rebirth is a real thing, because we see it just going on. I'm not the same Brad who started this video, and you're not the same Charlie or Jennifer or whatever your name might be, who started watching this video either. So that's a whole other thing about impermanence. But I would like to also give you another quote here from Dogen, and this is one I found myself. And this, I was trying to find quotes about impermanence in Dogen in the PDF files I have of the Nishijima cross-translations of Shobo Genzo. And I remembered that, oh my God, that's right, Nishijima Roshi does not use the word impermanence. He uses a different word, and I couldn't remember to save my life what that word was, and actually turns out to be a phrase, but I'll tell you what it is. The word is mujo in Japanese. And there's also a mujo, which means insentient, but they're slightly different pronunciations and they're different words, but we'll leave that aside. And Nishijima Roshi, although the common way of translating mujo is impermanence, he didn't like that translation, and so he translated it as that without constancy. That which is without constancy is how he. So if you're actually looking in the Nishijima cross translations of Dogen, you won't find, I think the word impermanence, because I did this, comes up in a couple of footnotes, but that's it. But this state without constancy comes up a lot, so mujo, that's how he translates it. And here's a quote in which this comes up a lot. And this comes from Dogen's essay Busho, Buddha Nature. And the quote goes like this: "The reflection that the mind is without constancy, the mind is impermanent." And about this he says, "The eternal Buddha Soke says, that without constancy, that which is impermanent, is the Buddha nature. So non-constancy, though variously understood by various beings, is always the Buddha nature." So this impermanence is the Buddha nature. That's what he's saying. So a lot of philosophies, and even Buddhism, and even Dogen's Buddhism to a certain extent, posit this idea of something that is permanent in the midst of all this impermanence. But when Dogen talks about Buddha nature, he talks about it being manifested as impermanence, among other things. So, Great Master Yoka Shinkaku says, "Actions are non-constancy. Actions are impermanent. All is empty. This is the Tathagata's, the Buddha's, great and round realization. The present," and now Dogen continues, "the present reflection that the mind is non-constancy, is impermanence, is itself the Tathagata's, the Buddha's, great and round realization. It is the great and roundly realized Tathagata mind. It is the great and realized Tathagata. So it is the Buddha. This understanding of impermanence is the Buddha." That's another way Dogen is weird. He says things like that. And then he goes on. "Mind, even if it intends not to reflect, follows the external world completely. Therefore, where there is mind, there is also reflection. In general, arrival at the supreme truth of bodhi, enlightenment, realization of the supreme right and balanced truth, is just non-constancy, is just impermanence, and is reflection of the mind. The mind is not necessarily constant because it goes far beyond the 4 lines and transcends the 800 negations. We don't have to worry about that, but it just goes far beyond everything. The mind is much bigger than we think it is. And he says, Dogen says, fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles, and stones large and small are the mind itself. So this bookshelf is the mind itself, and the laptop or tablet or what do you call it? One of these things, cell phone that you're watching this on, that's also mind, and the rocks that you're walking on are mind. Everything is mind. They are the mind itself, and our non-constancy, our impermanence itself, and our reflection itself. So that's the quote by Dogen in which he uses the word impermanent a lot. So that's what I'm going to talk about, and I probably just made a confusing mess of a video, but it's already gone on too long, so I'm going to cut off here and just tell you that if you want to support me, you can support me financially by going to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There's where you find my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and that's how I make most of my living. And that's how I support myself while I'm on these tours as well. So I really appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. That's perfectly your choice. Your body, your choice. Your money, your choice. So we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Ziggy's not coming with me on this tour, so I don't have a cameo by him, but I'll see if I can find a photo of him to put up at the end of the video from his Instagram account. So he's on Instagram at Ziggy Zen Dog. So if you're on Instagram, look for Ziggy Zen Dog, and you can see loads of pictures of Ziggy. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.